Want to bring in Wall Street Journal's Dan Henninger, along with our panel for the hour, Katherine Timpf and Matt Welch. Good to see you all. Dan, let's talk about taxes, because for all of the problems with the tax code, with the prepayment problems that we're having in New York, other high tax states, small businesses are having a lot of trouble figuring out what kind of code would adjust to their particular small business. But still, it means that more money is going to be in the private sector, which is the most productive sector for it to be in. That's got to be good for the economy, right? Yeah,
exactly. And the word here is the economy, the real economy out there. I mean, look, corporate rates came down from 35% to 21%, a huge cut. You've got immediate expensing of capital investments now. And I think that's going to serve as a propellant to what we have been seeing here recently in the real economy. It's growing at 3%. Consumer confidence is at a 17-year high. Unemployment is at a 17-year low. Manufacturing is at a 13-year high. And so you're seeing just a lot of strong activity in the real economy. And the tax cut can only push that forward into 2018. I mean, there was a lot of argument. Critics said you don't need a tax cut unless the economy is weak, like in 1980, 1981. You don't really need it when the economy is strong. But I think, David, what they're underestimating is the economy now has really changed a lot, mainly because of technology. Businesses are very sophisticated in how they run their businesses. The last 8 years, there's been a lot of anti-business activity by the Obama administration. Right. And all the deregulation we have seen this year, I think, in addition to the tax cut, is releasing this new technologically driven economy, not just in the United States, but around the world. France, Spain, even Japan is growing.
And Matt, I don't want to carp too much on the problems with the tax code, but I've been talking to some small business people and accountants that work with those small business people, and a lot of them are throwing up their hands. They can't figure out how this new code is going to work because it's not more simple, at least for them.
Yeah, the whole postcard thing didn't turn out to be much of anything, and it never does, and no one who's, I think, sophisticated ever really thought that it would. There's too many interests out there in order to make that happen. Politicians love there to be complications in the tax codes because that means they can grant favors.
So do accountants, by the way.
And so do accountants. So that's all true, and plus it was rushed. It was last minute. It was only literally the last minute and close to the last days of February or December that people knew what was going to be in it. I think we're all still here in New York trying to figure out whether we're going to be paying more or less. But here's the caveat to what Daniel said, and what Daniel says is true, is debt. Debt, historically, and conservatives talked a lot about this from 2009 to 2014 and kind of have stopped. If you have a big debt burden, that can be a dampening effect on the economy. That's what I worry about.
Kat, for a lot of people, the Reagan tax cuts were perfection. I mean, a lot of conservatives point to that as the perfect world and everything. But I remember in 1981 when there were a lot of problems with that particular the first tax cut that Reagan put in. One, it took 19 months to really kick into power, and as a result, we ended up with a terrible recession. The other thing is the top rate only came down to about 50%. It wasn't until the 86 tax cuts that it came down to 28%. So there were problems with Reagan. Usually the first shot at tax reform, if a president is committed to it, needs some improvement after a bit.
Whenever you pass any kind of legislation whatsoever, there's always going to be people that are unhappy with it, no matter what it is, because if it helps some people, it's going to not help other people. But I do think that this property tax thing is going to be an ongoing debate. I think that some people are still confused. I think that there might be some litigation over it as well. So I don't think that it's going to be something that's over right away.
We have been getting some complaints by members of Congress that we're kind of on the fence. Marco Rubio was complaining about some of the problems with the tax code and suggesting that those companies that bring their money back, and there may be as much as $2 trillion abroad that could come back, might actually just be putting it in stock buybacks and so on. What do you think about that, Dan?
Well, Rubio has been a critic of the tax bill. I think he's positioning himself as a social conservative. That's his choice. But look, what he is talking about in large part are Fortune 500 type companies, big corporations, and maybe some of them are going to do stock buybacks and pay out dividends. But the real economy isn't simply run by the largest corporations, but all those thousands and thousands, millions of incorporated companies both at the middle level and at the lowest level, is where the real job creation comes. And I don't think they're the ones who are going to be behaving as Marco Rubio is suggesting. They're looking to expand their businesses, as I've been suggesting, because they know how to do it. If they have the confidence to do it, if they know the government isn't going to jump in and intrude with the regulation, they will move forward. So I think the bulk of this tax cut is going to be invested in the real economy.
Good stuff, Dan, and our panel is staying with us. Meanwhile, did the media prematurely predict an end to the GOP? Signs that Republicans are heading into 2018 with a little more unity than people thought. Right after this. President Trump is going to be hosting Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell at Camp David next week for a strategy session. So is the GOP a little more unified heading into 2018? The GOP fundraiser, Noelle Nikpour and Kat and Matt are back with us. Noelle, it's always hard to predict this because just when you think they're coming together, you get another Trump tweet or you hear about something Mitch McConnell said and it all falls apart again.
Well, you know, the most important thing is we got the tax reform bill passed through, which shows unity among the Republican Party, which was, you know, on a rocky start because we couldn't get unity in the beginning. But what that does, looking further down the line for 2018, is it's the optics of unity. And this it shows the bigger picture when it comes to the donors. I mean, the donors are going to be looking at funding some of these races. And if there wasn't unity, there wasn't an appearance of unity, some of the donors may be sitting back on their checks, not willing to fund a lot of the 2018 races.
Well, Noelle,
so now that that's been released.
What specifically happens next? I mean, there is a split just between Ryan and McConnell, apparently, on whether it's entitlement reform, fixing welfare, et cetera, or whether you're going to focus on the infrastructure plan. Apparently, Mr. McConnell wants infrastructure, Mr. Ryan wants welfare reform, and the president is going with Mitch McConnell. So there is a split there.
Let me tell you something. My gut feeling on this, and I've already had some back conversations yesterday on this, is I think it's going to be infrastructure because Donald Trump has already said he wanted it. Mitch McConnell's wife, I think Elaine Chao, she is the transportation secretary, and this is going to get bipartisan support. I think Americans are tired of the feuding amongst the parties, and I think that this is the one key where we can get bipartisan support. And with that said, Ryan, I think, should have come out of the bag in the first place instead of health care, and I think he should have introduced infrastructure. So a lot of people are a little irritated that he didn't come out of the bag with it. So now the second time around, I think we have we have a chance to get something through with bipartisan support.
Well, Kat, you may not have to choose entirely about whether it's infrastructure or entitlement reform because there's a lot of entitlement reform that you can do without Congress. There's $60 billion of waste in Medicare alone, waste and fraud, according to a GAO report. The most recent one is probably worse than that now. So if the president just does the way he did with deregulation without Congress, he did most of that on his own, he could deal with just getting the waste and the fraud out of a lot of entitlements, whether it's Medicare, Medicaid might even be worse than that. And that would save billions of dollars and would put a win in his corner.
I think that would be great. I would love to see him do that, but I think he's all gung-ho for infrastructure, which I understand because that's more of the kind of thing he used to do. Sometimes you get a new job, you miss your old job, you want to kind of do some of your old job and your new job. Makes sense. But I would sure hope there's not unity in the GOP for this infrastructure bill because I thought the GOP, or at least they say sometimes, that they're supposed to be the fiscally conservative party. They're talking about $1 trillion here and with no talking about how they're going to actually get that money. So I would kind of hope, just for my own fiscally conservative soul, that I would see a little infighting when it comes to spending this kind of money.
And, Matt, there are a lot of conservatives. If they just focus on spending money in 2018 instead of saving money through entitlement reform, a lot of conservatives are going to be ticked off. I mean, Kat's not alone. There are a lot of free marketeers, members of the Freedom Caucus, et cetera, who are not going to like that.
They made this bed by voting for tax reform because the precursor to tax reform was an agreement by the GOP, including written by Bob Corker, to increase the deficit by $1.5 trillion over a decade, to increase spending. We've already increased the deficit up to $666 billion in the first 9 months of Trump. So it's built in. It's going to be a spending spree this year. There might be some people who are claiming to be upset. Trump wants to work on infrastructure, DACA and Obamacare reform. He's going to work with Democrats.
But, Noelle, he is a guy who works hard. He's up early in the morning and goes to bed late at night. He could do both. I mean, he could do these. He could do the DACA thing. He could do the infrastructure thing. And he could also fix our public service sector, which is just out of control. There was just one figure that I read today. Kim Strassel had a terrific piece on how he himself, the president, could fix a lot of the problems we have with our federal workers. 29,852 federal employees make more than $190,000 a year. That's more than all 50 governors in the United States. That's almost 30,000 federal employees are making more than all of our governors.
Well, that's a fantastic point, and that was a good article, by the way. But I will tell you, look what he's done for job creation. Look how many jobs in the private sector, not government jobs, but look how many jobs in the private sector. Look at the markets. Look how they're reacting, you know, to what he's been doing. So I do agree that I think he can work on all these issues. I mean, obviously, he's up at 3 a.m. tweeting things, and he's very involved, and he's very passionate about it. He lives to work, and he's living to do his job. And I think that that's what you're going to see. I think you're going to see him now. He's got his stride. He's got his feet wet. I think he now knows kind of, you know, how to navigate through these political waters as a businessman. This was kind of foreign to him. So now I think he's got the rhythm. And I look for 2018, I look for him to get really serious about navigating through other bills and getting it passed and roping it in.
Okay, let's just hope government doesn't get bigger. It should be getting a little smaller. Guys, thank you very much. Meanwhile, dangerously low temperatures outside and an unprecedented security presence. Should America just pop the champagne at home this year? We're going to lay out the threats to this New Year's Eve right after this. Between bitter cold and security threats, maybe Americans are better off staying at home where it's warm and safe. To former NYPD officer Darrin Porcher, Katherine Timpf, and Matt Welch are with us. And again, Kat's got to be out on New Year's Eve. I don't wish to be in her position, but somebody's got to do it. Darrin, you must have been out in the cold before on these New York nights. How do you do it? I see these police that are out there for hours and hours on end. I mean, do they give you these special silk underwear or something to keep you warm? What do they do?
It's a very coordinated detail. I was a lieutenant in the NYPD, and I worked many of these details down in Times Square. That bow tie area where the streets crisscross, so to speak, you're gonna have a contingent of sniper teams. You're gonna have officers with long guns. But we planned for this a month out.
But you're talking about the security. I'm being very simple here. How do you stay warm?
Believe it or not, the warm bodies pressed up next to one another, you don't feel as cold.
So the penguin comment from that tourist was right.
Well, I don't know if I won't go that far, but you got to remember, these people out there for hours and hours. Yeah. These people start lining up, I want to say maybe 12 o'clock in the afternoon, and when you get into those pedestrian pens, you can't move. So if you have to go to the bathroom, you lost your spot.
All right. We were talking before about how after 9/11 there was this special relationship that New York had with the feds in terms of keeping New Yorkers safe, and we are so glad that happens because there have been some awful terrorist attacks here, but there have been many, many, many more that have been prevented, a lot of which we never even heard about. So I imagine the feds are working pretty closely with the cops right now.
The NYPD and the federal government, federal law enforcement agencies coexist for the security here in New York City. This is something that's been going on for a while. It's just something that preceded 9/11, and we just kind of ramp up our fortifications as we move forward. When we take in consideration the recent 2 lone wolf attacks, the one on the West Side Highway and the one down in the subway, the NYPD, there's no credible threat in play because there was a video that came up a couple of weeks ago, an ISIS-inspired video.
Showing that Santa Claus character with
exactly.
a bomb in his bag.
That hasn't been confirmed in connection with a threat. However, it goes back to the fortifications that the NYPD and the federal government ramp up for this particular event, because we have 1 million+ people in a small area. And so we need to have optimum vigilance and fortification. And so it goes back to having the officers with the heavy weapons, long guns, snipers, etc. And I guarantee you that this is going to be a safe and secure environment.
Now, you care a lot about New York. You put your life on the line, literally, for New York. But I'm just wondering, as much as you love New York and the commerce here, would you advise people to stay home on New Year's Eve when you combine the factors, the cold and the danger?
I would stay home based on the weather. But in terms of the safety perspective, absolutely. We provide optimum safety for pedestrians and patrons that come to watch this ball drop.
Okay. Kat, how are you going to stay warm? You're going to be out there.
I'm not. I'm just going to do it, and I'm going to be very, very cold. I hate cold.
But this is dangerous stuff. I mean, this is hypothermia weather we're talking about.
Yeah, I'm going to, well, what I did, because I've done New Year's Eve for Fox News the past 2 years, I'm doing it again this year, which is why everyone should stay home and watch me beginning at 8 p.m., is I've actually strapped hand warmers to my entire body.
Wow,
so they're
you
not
can do
just
that.
for hands, people. Yeah, my entire body.
Did you ever do that,
a suit of hand warmers under my clothes.
You know, it's weird. I was running around so much on New Year's Eve, working as a lieutenant, that this year, they say it's going to 12 degrees, something to that effect. I've been out there when it was really cold, but you just don't feel it when you're working. When you're working as a cop.
Okay, not as a cop. I'm not a cop. It's
Big
a little
difference.
different. A little
Matt,
different.
are you and I going to be watching Kat at home?
Disorderlies. I mean, it takes a toll on you.
First of all, with all due respect, these plans don't sound very credible because none of it involves a flask and some warming liquids to keep you.
Did you ever think about keeping your insides warm like that?
I don't think I should be drunk on the air.
Yeah, probably not. Probably not a good idea.
Don't think.
Not this year, folks. Well, meanwhile, is America partying too hard? A new warning about alcohol consumption this New Year's. Wait till you hear what is normal now. And stocks about to close out the year at record highs, but it's not all green on Wall Street today. We're going to break down what companies investors are not betting on right after this. Well, President Trump telling the New York Times he's going to win in 2020 because the media needs him. To Turning Point USA co-founder Charlie Kirk. Charlie, there are 2 points here, what he's saying and why he's saying it. First of all, to what he's saying. Any truth to it?
I think so. Well, look, I think he's going to win in 2020. I think he's going to have a wonderful 2018. And you look at this tax cut that was just passed, we're going to see an explosion of economic growth. But look, I think people vastly underestimate this president, and I think he's really settling in, especially his last couple months, with these massive decisions. And you look at his approval rating, it's exactly where it was for Barack Obama at this very same time after his first year. And when people are going to see more and more money in their pockets and more economic success, you're going to see the president's popularity improve even more.
All right. So the question, we may never know the answer to this, but why do you think he's saying this? Does he just like to play with the media, or what's going on?
Well, I think that's part of it. I mean, I think he likes to be able to punch back to the media that's been extremely unfair to him these last 9 months. And I like to say, you know, if we had a Democrat president that achieved what President Trump has been able to do this last year, whether it be the stock market gains, unemployment falling, 1.5 million jobs created, they would say that was historic. Instead, you know, all these other media networks, all you hear about is Russia and all this other nonsense. So, look, I think he likes to punch back against the media. It's been very unfair to him. And he's finding ways to go around. He's finding ways to circumvent the traditional media channels and go directly to the American people.
Matt, this is a big president. He's not only physically big, but he's big in everything he says, everything he does is big. And therefore, he's an ideal president to cover from whatever perspective you are, whether you're anti-Trump, pro-Trump, or right down the middle.
Absolutely. Everybody who covers news for a living, every network that dwells on news, they're seeing subscriptions, viewership, audience go up. They're all becoming nervous wrecks in the process, and some of them are freaking out because he calls them fake news all the time. I mean, there's going to be no honeymoon with the press and this president because he wouldn't want that at all. The only thing that Republicans have in common with each other anymore, it isn't about international trade. It isn't about a whole lot of things that used to be Republican. It's that they all hate the media. So the president is going to be bopping the media in the nose every single week, and you know that's true. And the media is going to return fire, especially since next year the biggest political story is going to be the Russia investigation, and they just don't agree on that.
Kat, we know that he hates fake news and talks about it all the time, how much he hates and everything, but does he need the media? They are a great punching bag for him. It does give him a sort of unity with his base whenever he talks about the fake media and how much they hate him and how much they hate the deplorable. Is it because of that deplorable comment that the media did what Hillary did, is link Donald Trump in with all of his supporters as deplorables?
Well, I think, for one thing, the deplorable comment might be why he won, or a major reason why he won, because there were people who supported him or sort of supported him, and they don't like being called something like that just because they support President Trump. But I think that the media thing, I think they need each other. I think they feed off of each other. I think that this is going to go on forever and ever. I thought that the word favor was interesting, because I agree with Matt. There's going to be no honeymoon. It's not all of us. I mean, he has accomplished some things, and rather than covering, for example, how the economy is doing well, people are covering instead on CNN, MSNBC, you know, how much Diet Coke he drinks and stuff like that.
Right.
But the thing is, that's still covering him. It's all Trump all the time. And if he wanted to be on any of these networks, he could at any time, and they would interview him, which is, you saw how much press he got in the last election.
Right.
He didn't even have to really spend money on advertising, because he was on every channel all the time.
And Charlie, nobody knows advertising, nobody knows branding better than Donald Trump did. His whole life he's been talking about the value of that word Trump, and whenever that word Trump is exposed, whether it's for negative purposes by the mainstream media or what, it's good for the brand itself, for Donald Trump.
That's correct. I think he's going to have the most name ID imaginable going into 2020. And look, you have to give a lot of credit. He was able to rebrand what traditionally would have been a failed messaging strategy of this last tax plan. You know, originally McConnell wanted to call it tax reform. He said, no, we're going to call it tax cuts, tax cuts, tax cuts. And you know, people was like, yeah, it actually sounds a lot better. And he's a master. He's brilliant at branding, and he's able to get, you know, short sound bites out there, whether it be Make America Great Again, or even, you know, hey, we're going to get the wall and it's going to go 10 feet taller. And he's built a brand. And in 2017, you've seen the media have to cover it. And I agree with Kat. You know, it's 24/7 on every single network, not always very positive. Usually they're covering stuff that's not so, you know, good with what he's doing, but the results speak for themselves, and it's going to be very decisive in these next coming years.
An old saying in PR: as long as they spell the name right, as long as you get the name out there and spell it right, you're doing well. Thank you very much, Charlie. Good to see you. Appreciate it.
Yeah,
well, Netflix stock soaring over 50% this year. CEO Reed Hastings seeing annual pay his jump to over $29 million next year. Why 2018 could be even stronger for streaming. That's coming next. Many in the entertainment business are screaming over streaming. Movie theater attendance has hit a 22-year low for 2017. Traditional pay TV providers, well, they lost more than 2.6 million people from cord cutting. And virtual distributors, they are gaining a $1.7 million subscriber base. So where does this go in the new year? To entertainment journalist Kim Serefin, and Katherine Timpf is still with us. Kim, is the movie theater experience itself dying?
You know, I don't think so. I think when there's a good movie, people go and see it. You know, look at Star Wars right now. This is what's going to bring the U.S. domestic box office over $11 billion this year. Only the third time in history that's happening, and thanks to Star Wars, which will close out the year with over $500 million. So I think that's a good thing. When there are movies like Wonder Woman, people go to see them. When there are movies like Beauty and the Beast, people go to the theaters. When there's the 10th version of Pirates of the Caribbean, people don't go, you know.
And I used to go all the time. I'm a film buff, and I used to love going to movie theaters. I don't enjoy it that much anymore. I'm more aware of people kicking me in the back. I'm more aware of people spilling popcorn on me, and tall people, you know, these basketball players who sit down right in front of me when I have a great view. I mean, it's because I'm so accustomed now to watching movies at home that I'm more upset by bad things that might happen at the theater.
Sure, but when there's a good movie to go see, you want to go see it. You want to rush to the theater for opening weekend. You don't want to wait till it comes out on Netflix. And that's why theaters are bringing in, you know, reclining seats and high-end concession stands. It's not just popcorn anymore.
It depends on the kind of movie. I mean, a Titanic, yes. An Avatar, yes. A Star Wars, yes. But
Lady Bird, maybe you'll wait and see it when it comes out.
Or something that was a brilliant film like Hidden Figures, but that I could just as easily watch at home as in the movie theater. What do you think?
Even if a movie was like about me and especially for me, and dedicated to me, I still would not go to the movie theater.
Ever?
Ever. It's the worst. You eat too much popcorn, you feel sick for like 2 days. Everyone around you is always chewing in your face.
You can't stop, can you?
You can't stop.
Yeah.
And I've known since I was little that it's going to make me sick, and I still just eat myself sick every single time.
You know, there are new subscription services like MoviePass. There's a great article just a day or two ago in the New York Times about it. You've probably been hearing about it. You pay $10 a month for the subscription service, and you can go to unlimited movies.
All right.
Yeah, why would you want to do, like, this sounds like my own personal version from hell.
Ladies, another form of entertainment we want to talk about. Many are about to pop some champagne for New Year's, but are you drinking too much? A new report out says Americans are consuming 13 alcoholic drinks a week on average. Kit?
That's probably more than that, because everyone lies to their doctor, right? When they ask them how much. That's not that much, right? It's like less than 2 a day.
I don't think so. I mean, I actually do, let's see, a bottle of beer usually at dinner and then maybe a bottle of wine during the weekend.
You can get drinks at movie theaters now, too, so that can take you through that horrible experience that you're talking about.
Kat, you know, we always hear these warnings about drinking and doing other bad stuff. I don't think people really pay attention anymore, partly because of the fact that so many of those predictions turn out to be wrong. Salt is good for you one year, bad for you another.
Right. Plus, having a drink is a nice time. That's an example of what it can be a nice time. So people probably aren't likely to listen. I don't think having 13 drinks a week, less than 2 a day, is really going to hurt you. Everyone can calm down.
13 drinks is not a lot for you?
In a week? I don't think that's a lot.
That seems a lot, though. You're right. There are always studies. You know, have a glass of wine a day. Don't have a glass of wine a day. Have chocolate every day. Have coffee every day, which I think those studies are commissioned by Starbucks for sure.
I mean,
but
maybe if you're doing it every single week and you never, ever don't drink, that would be a problem. But if that's a week that you have, I think that's just fine.
You're not going to drink when you're on air, but the minute you're off air, you're going to pop a bottle of
I'm going to drink when I'm off air. Absolutely. It's New Year's Eve.
Good for you. Good for you. All right. Drinking may actually be a good way to warm up. Freezing cold weather in Times Square. We'll give you more details on that coming up after this.